If you please rise as the family enters. You may be seated. The words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything. A time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. Time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service this afternoon with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Shirley's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God.
Izmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echzar, bitnoteshe yarbitzeini armei menuchot yenaleini nafshi shovev yanecheini v'magre tzedek leman shemo gam ekilech begetz haremovet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishanetecha Hamuni Taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai Dishanta Vashem min roshi kosireva achtov v'chesed yedefuni kol לאורך ימים.
The 23rd Psalm, we read, Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. Giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit. Guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. Prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. It's my honor to call upon two of Shirley's children, Gail and Don, to say a few words.
Our rabbi in Boulder says you don't thank people for coming to a funeral. It's what we do to show love and support. So I'll say it's nice to see you here. Everyone loved Shirley. Whether she brought you animal crackers, gave you a container with cabbage soup or chili, or her baked apples, offered you some of her favorite Seeds candies or some holiday peeps, or encouraged you to take some licorice from her candy jar. Sharing was her thing.
Born in Council Bluffs in 1922 to immigrant parents from Poland and Lithuania, Shirley Flora Gershun moved to Schuyler for the early part of her life, then to Florence before settling in Council Bluffs, where her folks owned Gershun's Department Store, a mom-and-pop general clothing store on Broadway. She proudly graduated from Abraham Lincoln High School, where her name is now displayed in their Hall of Fame. She always felt a strong loyalty to Council Bluffs and can reminisce about it for hours. One of her great pleasures was riding around revisiting old neighborhoods and pointing out who lived where. If she found out you were from the Bluffs, you were in for a ride down memory lane, and there was an immediate bond. She started dating Dad when she was 16, and he would pay the toll to cross the old Exarban Bridge. She entered the University of Iowa, but left to work as a key punch operator at the Martin Bomber plant in Bellevue. Buddy and Shirley married on November 1st, 1942, at Omaha's Blackstone Hotel, when Dad had a short leave from the service. They honeymooned in Chicago's Drake Hotel, where at the time a phone call could cost more than the room.
In our eyes, she was the perfect mom. She gardened and always grew beautiful flowers, along with lots of mint. She had a green thumb, so most of what she planted grew and flourished. She was a great cook, and to this day, most of us can't quite get the recipes down, because like many of her generation, she didn't use measurements. We even, initiated by Anne, made a family recipe book for her 80th birthday so we could try to pin her down. It didn't work, and it never tastes the same as when Shirley made it. Every holiday was a big family gathering, and every birthday was celebrated and made special. Even then, there were assorted cookie jars and candy jars full of licorice. She loved antique shopping on Saturday mornings, and no matter what she came home with, it always started off as a planter filled with philodendron for color.
From an early age, she embroidered and continued that well into her 80s. Most of the walls at home were covered with samplers, some traditional, some just cute sayings or pictures, and some inspirational. Her favorite was, "If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music he hears, however measured or far away." Growing up, our home was open to everyone, family, their friends, our friends, and she always had a way of making people feel comfortable. She loved entertaining, and she was good at it. She and Dad enjoyed hosting visitors through the Chamber of Commerce or Kiwanis. Having out-of-town guests for dinner and showing off what all Omaha had to offer was commonplace for our household. She and Dad traveled extensively, loving meeting new people and learning other cultures, and making an effort to keep in touch with people they met. When she became involved with Soviet Jewry, her trips were mostly to meetings and conferences, and of course to Russia, until they denied her visa requests, at which time I think my dad was relieved. After all, to them, she was a troublemaker. I think he held his breath every time she went, but she had a mission, and he supported it. Her work in the Soviet Jewry movement and her unwavering belief in all human rights is well documented. We are all very fortunate and grateful to have many wonderful tapes, interviews, articles about her activities and her many years as an activist. She often said she felt so strongly about doing what she did because she was fortunate to have been born when and where she was, and if the tables were turned, she hoped someone would do the same to help her. She proved that one person can make a difference, and if you believe in something strongly, actions speak louder than words, and she used them both.
She was always extremely grateful to people who helped her cause, donating clothing and other items, people who rallied whenever she asked. She also cherished the many friendships she made with those locally and around the globe who worked so passionately to help those without the freedoms we take for granted. Her relationship with the University of Nebraska started with a class that culminated in one of her early trips to the Soviet Union. She did her research and, with names in tow, used this opportunity to meet refuseniks and see and hear firsthand their plight. Traveling with her on that trip was like being in a spy novel, and I learned a different side of my mother, a very brave, gutsy, and determined one. Her activity and her advocacy for human rights led to her receiving an honorary doctorate of humane letters in 1996. Several years later, Mom and Dad set up the Shirley and Leonard Goldstein Lecture Series at UNO to bring local awareness to human rights issues. But most important to her and her greatest joy was family. Nothing gave her more pleasure than her grandkids and great-grandchildren. She always wanted to know what everyone was up to, and of course couldn't be happier than when everyone was together. She, along with her perfect partner and dad, taught us all the importance of family, of Judaism, of community, and of giving back.
She was just shy of 95 years old. She met lawmakers and dignitaries. She received humanitarian honors, had babies named after her, and books dedicated to her. She lived a long, rewarding, meaningful life filled with love and fueled by purpose. She touched so many people of different backgrounds and different generations. Recently, she may have struggled a bit, but she never lost her smile, her sense of humor, or her love of just being around people. Her passing marks an end to a whole generation of Goldsteins, but not without great memories and many funny stories.
One of my friends said of her mother, "It wasn't always easy being my mother's daughter. Ours was persistent and could be very stubborn." When we traveled to Israel in 2010 for her to receive recognition from the Knesset, one of the refuseniks, happily settled in Jerusalem, came up to me and thanked me for lending our mother to them during those years. They needed her more than we did then, and we were surrounded by all these people whose lives were changed because of the work she and others did. She leaves behind a rich legacy of caring for others and bringing awareness to worldwide issues regarding human rights. Everyone loves Shirley. We will remember her kindness, her compassion, her wit, and her spunk, that little twinkle in her eye and cackle in her laugh. She was loved immensely and will be missed immeasurably.
My honor to call upon Shirley's grandchildren.
We are Deb and Becca, Ben, Emily, Molly, and Molly's brother Zach is in Sri Lanka and couldn't be here today. But Grandma called all of us Cookie. To you, she was Shirley Goldstein, bold, brave activist, and you've heard a lot of those stories over the years, and I'm sure there'll be more today. To us, she was Grandma, and we just want to share our memories with you today. Shirley Goldstein, our grandma, was fun. A typical visit to Grandma's and Papa's began like this. A walk up her porch where two stone statues were outfitted in whatever holiday garb or season was appropriate. Two human-sized dolls, which we all had to call the people, sat on the bench, dressed up in real clothes. Once opening the front door, there was a jar of red licorice in the hallway to entice us into the living room, where orange and green candy slices sat in jars on the coffee table. And then Grandma herself, waiting with her contagious smile, would say, "Hi, Cookie."
She filled our lives with love and warmth and food, and taught us the importance of family. Grandma and Papa gave us Shabbat dinners every Friday night, gingham tablecloths, needlepoint, licorice, and love. Her kitchen welcomed us with cabbage soup, Vidalia onions, and baked apples with those little cinnamon red hots at the bottom. And she had the most impressive marshmallow peep collection, aged to stale perfection and organized by year of production in her kitchen cabinet. She loved the animals too. The squirrels scratching at her back door were well fed, and she always kept stale bread for us to throw those lucky ducks in the backyard pond. And when we would sit on the couch, she would tickle our feet. When we went to college, she sent us packages of 2-pound bags of animal crackers and clean socks to make sure we felt at home. Her partnership with Papa was strong and admirable, and an example we all aspire to. They were a true team. They prioritized family. They stood strong for human rights. And most important, his taste test was the secret ingredient in most of her recipes.
Taught us the importance of travel and learning about other cultures. She was warm and kind to everyone that she met, and she always wanted to learn and understand their stories. She showed us how to welcome others into our family and into the community. She and Papa built a big tent and welcomed everyone they met into it with open arms. There was always someone new and interesting to meet when you were at dinner at Grandma and Grandpa's house, Papa's house. As we got older and traveled, she always had a list of people for us to call in whatever city we were visiting. Yes, clearly before cell phones. And if Grandma wasn't calling people, they were calling her. She answered every phone call, many times international calls from Israel, making time to share her laugh, friendship, and her life.
She had a biting sense of humor that was witty, playful, and feisty. You never had to worry about whether Grandma would share her opinion with you. She made us proud and inspired us all to give back to the world and to our communities, to stand up for what you believe in, and to give a voice to others. She brought us to protests and marches. She inspired our interest in social justice. Grandma was humble, but didn't need to be. After all, she did play a major role in an entire Soviet Jewry movement, traveling back and forth to Russia, giving a voice to Jews that were repressed in their own country. She never backed down. Not even the Soviet Union's KGB could stop her. Whether she was smuggling blue jeans to refuseniks so they could sell them for money that they so desperately needed, or resettling new immigrants in Omaha and taking them on their first trip to our giant grocery stores, she demonstrated that one person can make a difference in the lives of thousands around the world.
As many of us know, her memory, at almost age 95, was slipping. And so when we were here just a few weeks ago for the Goldstein Lecture on Human Rights, she noticed all the hoopla and all the people that were coming to say hi. And so she quietly turned to Gail and said, "What am I so famous for?" So yes, it was a question that she asked at the end of her life, but it was also a question that she asked throughout her life. that as people praised her accomplishments and her heroic actions, to Grandma, she was just always doing the right thing, speaking up, taking action, recognizing that she was in a position to help. And so she did. Certainly never for the awards or the recognition or fame, in her words, simply because she cared and because she felt strongly that it was the right thing to do. She leaves that legacy for all of us to learn from. Thank you.
We read in Mishle and Proverbs, "What a precious find is an Ashes Chayil, a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond rubies. Her husband puts his confidence in her and lacks no good thing. She's good to him, never bad, all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy and extends her hand to the poor. She is clothed with strength and splendor. She looks to the future cheerfully. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She oversees the activities of her household and never eats the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband praises her and says, 'Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all.' Charm is deceitful and beauty vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Extol her for the fruit of her hand. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. It is my honor to call upon Anna Mozenkis.
Shirley, Shirley, our dear Shirley. As I stand here representing our Russian Jewish Omaha community, I might as well represent the world Russian Jewish community, because if not for the efforts of people like our dear Shirley, brave, fearless, and determined, Russian Jews would not have gotten their freedom. Shirley probably didn't realize what type of politics she was getting herself into. When she was taking secret tapes with refuseniks' names from out of the Soviet customs, she was walking on the edge of the very real danger of getting thrown into Russian jail. But being so sweet and maybe in some way naive, she did it in the best possible way, like an actress without formal training. People were released out of jails, where they were thrown into only because they wanted to leave the Soviet Union, and thanks to someone like Shirley who brought their names to the Western world. How many of the refuseniks were for years out of the jobs for the same reasons that they wanted to leave? And Shirley would organize support for those families one way or the other. Organizing groups for marching on Washington, D.C. and demanding freedom for Russian Jews, that was Shirley. Shirley was one of a kind. From her escapades under the nose of KGB in the former Soviet Union on so many secretive trips, working with the likes of Natan Sharansky, the current head of the International Jewish Agency, and so many others to bring justice to the world, to serving her constant, beautiful, energizing smiles in every room she ever walked into here in Omaha, as I see. She was always doing as much as she could. She came to the former Soviet Union bringing what she could do to help others feel supported and take out many of the stories of suffering that then galvanized American Jewry to stand up for their brothers and sisters in the old country. My son wanted me to make sure I mentioned that there are few, if any, women he ever looked up to like he did to Shirley. She was the epitome of hesed, kindness. It was not enough for her to know about somebody in pain on the other side of the planet and to send them well wishes. She was there and ready to sacrifice her 100% for a cause she knew was just. And there was no saying no to Shirley. She was a woman on a mission. And I know that I am speaking again not just for me and my family, but for the large Russian Jewish community that could flee persecution to freedom and start anew due to the hard work and passion that Shirley and the rest of the community of activists had done. As my husband Igor said in a recent interview with us and Shirley, because of her, we are here and had a second life. Many of us met Shirley in person only after arriving to the United States. She was a role model to many, and it was hard to imagine that this petite, beautiful, always smiling, sweet lady was such a fighter. But the truth is, the biggest fighter doesn't have to have huge muscles to win. You can win a biggest fight in life with a kind but determined heart. The Iron Curtain of the Soviet Union fell in part under the pressure of petite and sweet housewife, our Shirley Goldstein. In Yiddish language, her last name translates as a golden stone. She definitely deserved to have that name, to be as strong as a stone, but to have a heart of gold. For what Shirley accomplished in her life, for fighting for the freedom that was given to so many, we express our deepest, deepest appreciation and the biggest thank you. We love you, Shirley.
My honor to call upon Zarina Kozanovsky.
In honor of Shirley Goldstein. As my family and I stepped into this bright, new, unknown world, from the moment Shirley greeted us at the airport with blue and green carnations in hand, the likes of which we'd never seen, and for the nearly 4 decades since, Shirley never ceased to amaze us with her endless spring of kindness in all things, large and small. A great humanitarian with a huge vision and mission, Shirley also cared about the people in her life vividly and tirelessly. I can share just a few personal examples here. When I was just a little girl, recently arrived to this land, Shirley brought for my birthday a colorful book for learning English, a book we saved and which my younger daughter Ariel used as well when it was her turn to learn how to read. When I was growing up and becoming an avid piano player, Shirley took me to performance after performance of famous musicians, Russian and otherwise, passing through Omaha. When it came time for me to marry my now ex-husband, Shirley claimed first dibs on throwing my bridal shower in her and Buddy's home, and how lovely that evening was. When Shirley heard that my step-uncle was a well-known St. Petersburg artist whose nostalgic oils aimed to preserve the memory of the Jewish shtetls of Belarus, She took the initiative to bring nearly 200 of Abram Robkin's paintings on tour across the Atlantic to grace the walls of the Bemis Center for Contemporary Art and the JCC in Omaha before they continued to California and beyond. Shirley spent memorable afternoons with my parents, Joseph and Leah Kazanovsky, and kids, and also my brother and his kids whenever we came to town from the west and east coasts. Shirley continued to nurture our friendship and took pride in the achievements of our younger generation. We have been fortunate to gather many fond memories of our time and experiences together. My children and parents really wanted to be here today, but since it wasn't practicable, my eldest daughter also wrote something for Shirley, my 11-year-old, that she wanted me to share. Dear Shirley, I am deeply saddened to hear of your passing, but I am confident that God has decided to bring you to the Garden of Eden. You have always been like a knight in shining armor for my family and me. You paved the way for so many Jews who were discriminated against in the Soviet Union, like my mother and grandparents, toward a life of freedom and possibilities. Your acts were the exploits of a noble warrior. You were not only a hero, but also a beloved family member. Your face was always painted with a smile. You were warm-hearted, affectionate, selfless, and benevolent. I will forever be inspired by the goodness you gave to this world, your friend, Sarah Gorbatov. Thus, you see, Shirley will certainly be remembered with reverence by us, our children, and our grandchildren, and by all those whose lives she was able to improve as a result of her strong convictions, surprising bravery, and admirable perseverance. There aren't enough words, but may we all aspire with such fervor to leave a beautiful mark on the world, and may Shirley's neshama rise higher and higher in Gan Eden and reunite with her dear buddy. Thank you. Zarina Kazanovsky.
Hayom Shiva Asar Yom Shehem Shnei Shavuot Shlosha Yamim LaOmer. Today is the 17th day of the Omer, which equals 2 weeks and 3 days. Beginning at the second Seder, we're commanded to count the Omer. This daily recital from 1 to 49, commemorating the journey the Israelites took from Egypt to Sinai, from slavery from freedom, from individuals to a nation. How fitting that we sit here today on the 17th day of the Omer to remember a woman who took her own people from slavery to freedom. Shirley was born May 10, 1922 in Council Bluffs, Iowa, to Selma and Ben Gershun. Raised in Schuyler, Nebraska until age 7, her father ran a general merchandise store. She loved her parents dearly. Her father, Ben, born in Poland and after moving to the United States, served in the U.S. military. Following his time in the service, Ben was instrumental in resettling immigrants at the end of World War I, a lesson that stuck with Shirley her entire life. Shirley's mother, Selma, instilled a love of family and faith, as well as a love of the state of Israel, as she was one of the first people in the Omaha Council Bluffs area to sell Israel bonds. Shirley enjoyed high school at Abraham Lincoln. She was active at dances, taking part in plays, as well as being in the literary club. Growing up, Shirley was surrounded by family, her aunts, uncles, and cousins always being around. While in Council Bluffs, Shirley attended Bethel for Hebrew school, paying that nickel to the driver to get her to Best on time. Growing up, Shirley learned a great deal about her Jewish roots from Bethel and her parents. In listening to her testimony for the Jewish Historical Society, she spoke about having family Shabbat dinners and her mother light Shabbat candles every Friday night. After graduation from Abraham Lincoln High School, Shirley attended the University of Iowa for a year, while at the same time men were beginning to be called up for World War II. She decided it would be best to be home and return to Council Bluffs. Shirley then attended Dickinson Business School, where she took a class in key punch operation, the precursor to modern-day computer programming. While in high school, Shirley would meet the love of her life, and she and Buddy were married in November of 1942. Shirley followed Buddy around during the beginning of his time in the service. However, once he was deployed, she knew it was time to return to Omaha. After Buddy returned home, the couple moved into the Dewey apartments, at which point their family began to grow. They welcomed Donald into their lives, and Gail was born almost 2 years later. With 2 children, the family decided to move to a house, and it was there they welcomed Kathy into the family. The family lived in Fair Acres, allowing all 3 kids, Donald, Gail, and Kathy, to attend and graduate from Central High School. There's no question that Shirley was a wonderful wife, mother, daughter, and grandmother, active both in her community and with her family. Yet it was not until the early 1970s that she found her mission in life. Shirley, I am told, was never one to play cards or sit by the pool at the country club. Rather, she became a dedicated advocate and activist for Soviet Jewry. Helping resettle refugees was in her genes from her father, Ben. Shirley and Buddy had gone to the USSR as tourists, and upon their return, Shirley wanted her hometown of Omaha, as well as the world, to know what was going on to her fellow Jews in Russia. After returning home from one trip and seeing that a few Russian families were being supported in Des Moines, Shirley went to the Jewish Federation of Omaha asking for permission to sponsor 2 families. In 1975, the Jewish Federation awarded her a $300 stipend for each family to help them get settled. From furniture and bedding at the Mart, to silverware from Borsheim's, to landlords who helped lower the rent, it was a community mission. Writer Leo Biga, in his article for the Jewish Press, wrote that Shirley went to Russia, to the Soviet Union, 7 times. Meeting with leaders and rank-and-file Jews alike, Shirley took chances, brazenly ignoring U.S. State Department warnings and Soviet orders to steer clear of troublemakers. Indeed, she became a familiar figure to refuseniks in Moscow, Leningrad, Kiev, Odessa, and other cities. A benevolent angel from the West bearing contraband gifts, a tiny rebel with the brass of a cat burglar. She recorded testimonies and snapped pictures, concealing cassette tapes and film cartridges under her clothes. She sneaked these things in and out with a mischievous glee. A true believer, unafraid to upset the Politburo or defy the KGB, who knew of her, tried to discourage her, but she carried on anyway because she was on a mission. In the end, Shirley and her partners helped resettle over 200 or more Russian families into the Omaha community. How many of those families now have grown children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren that have gone on to make an impact in Omaha and across the world? The Talmud teaches that to save one's life is to save the entire world. How do we honor a woman who saves so many worlds that the number is too high to count? In Shirley's words, the world had to know what was happening. It was a priority. I would not have rather done anything else. Shirley knew that the fight for freedom would need more than just the force of local communities, and through her connections, she was instrumental in getting the Jackson-Vanik Amendment passed. The amendment attached to a trade bill provided Russia with an opportunity to become a favored nation, but only if they eased travel restrictions on Soviet Jews. In an interview she gave during the height of the movement, Shirley explained why she threw herself into the fray. These people, she said, cannot speak out for themselves, so other people must do it for them. I feel like what I'm doing is something important. It's hard for people in the U.S. to grasp what all they have to do is give up for just wanting to leave and how much support they need to survive. Seeing all they endure makes you want to help just one more case. Shirley and Buddy were also alarmed by how the world kept relatively silent as the repression went unchecked. It was an ugly reminder of what had happened during the Holocaust. People didn't speak out, and then there was oppression. Those were atrocities, Shirley interjected. Atrocities, yes, but a lot of people felt anything could happen in the Soviet Union. Shirley went on to say, because people were disappearing in Russia, they'd just be taken off the street for no reason, and we thought if they can do that, they could do anything. It's vital to understand the love and support that Shirley received from Buddy. It was only after their first trip to the Soviet Union that Shirley realized something must be done. While Buddy had no desire to return to the Soviet Union, he was behind Shirley and her work 100%. I'm told it was probably best that Buddy was unaware of some of Shirley's work, holding his breath every time she left till the time she returned safely in Omaha. Whether she was at home in Omaha or in the Soviet Union, they were always a team. It was a 1975 Omaha World Herald-sponsored trip that would be one of her most famous. Shirley was interviewing refuseniks one morning outside a Moscow synagogue, closely watched by the KGB, when someone asked her, "Have you met Sharansky?" Shirley answered with the now famous words, "Sharansky, who's he?" Never heard of him. Well, Anatoly Sharansky was the voice of all the refuseniks. She didn't know why she didn't recognize his name, as she later said. "I wasn't into it deep enough yet." Her guide told her, "I'll bring Sharansky by at 1 p.m., so a group of them came. There must have been 15 to 16 people in the room, and there was Sharansky, a young guy, very vocal in meeting with people. Shirley said to him, "I want the names of those being refused entry and what's happening to these people." It's my honor to read a letter from Mr. Sharansky and his wife, Avital. "Dear Don, Gail, and Kathy, and the entire Goldstein mishpacha, your darling mother, Shirley, was a 5-star general in the Army of Students and Housewives who defeated the KGB and brought us freedom. She was one of the most unrelenting 5-star generals. For 25 years, she traveled together with Leonard as a tourist to secret places in the former Soviet Union, but never wasted a minute as a fighter. When we met for the first time in a hotel in Moscow, she immediately gave me a tape recorder and directed me to the bathroom so that I could dictate the names of the refuseniks and their individual stories of persecution. Of course, she didn't hesitate even for a minute to smuggle this tape to freedom and then to make sure that it was disseminated to tens of thousands of people all over the world. With the KGB, she was immovable, and for us, she was a soft and wise sister in a close-knit family. She was a Jewish fighter and a Yiddish mama at the same time. She was the true embodiment of this unique struggle when we Jews became one loving and fighting family. So it is not surprising at all that she and my mother, Ida, became such close friends. Avital and I and my brother Leonard and Raya will always cherish her friendship. May you be comforted among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Signed, Natan and Avital Sharansky, Jerusalem, Israel. Shirley's last visit to the Soviet Union was in 1989. After 1989, the Soviets had learned about Shirley and revoked her visa for further trips. I'm told that even though the family was in the trucking business, owning trucks, vans, cars, and garages, when they would come home at night, they had to park in the driveway or the street, as the garage was full of luggage for friends who would eventually be traveling to the Soviet Union. Whether it be jeans and cigarettes to vitamins, Shirley would go as far as to open the vitamin and pill containers and pull out the cotton so more medicine could be filled in. While the Soviet community needed these items, as has been said, they were more important as items to trade on the black market. Jews were not allowed to hold certain jobs, and these items allowed them to care for their families. Don, Gail, and Kathy told a story of getting a phone call 10 to 15 years ago from a man who had immigrated from Russia into Canada and would be in Omaha for a few days. He survived because of Shirley and Buddy's hard work and generosity. He asked to take the whole family out to dinner, and when the check came, of course, Buddy reached out to take care of it, but the man insisted on paying. This is the least I can do for your family, for saving me and my family. For her work in both the Jewish and non-Jewish community, she was awarded the Humanitarian of the Year Award, the National Conference of Christian and Jews, in addition receiving an honorary doctorate of humane letters from the University of Nebraska-Omaha in 1996 for her many contributions to the cause of human rights. It was the first time she ever wore a graduation robe, an impressive feat for a young girl from Council Bluffs who never graduated from college. Through it all, everyone knew Shirley knew a woman who was humble, a woman who cared about her family and friends, a woman who wanted to leave the world a better place than how she found it. Shirley did not look for accolades. She looked to do the right thing. Bethel recently helped settle a Syrian family, and during the process, many of Shirley's friends, those who had worked alongside her in the 70s and 80s, came up to me saying, if only she was a little bit younger, she'd be right by your side. It was an honor to know Shirley. It was an honor to have her in our home and to watch her play with our kids. They may not remember her as they grow up, but they will learn of a housewife from Omaha who told the Soviet Union to let my people go. The entire Goldstein family, to Don, Gail, and Kathy, of course to your spouses, great-grandchildren and great-grandchildren, it could not have always been easy sharing your mother with the world. And yet today we have come together as a community and as a people to thank you for lending us her, for her life. May Shirley's soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life, and may she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. A few quick announcements before we end our service here with El Male and Mourner's Kaddish. After Kaddish, I'd ask that you allow the family to exit down this middle row. There's a dessert reception that will be following in the social hall. The family would love to be able to see everyone. But also this evening, and more importantly this evening at 6 p.m. here at Bethel, and tomorrow night at 8 p.m., the family will be sitting Shiva. So again, the services are this evening at 6 p.m., and tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. If there are questions, please see me afterward. Again, I'll ask that you rise for El Male Rachamim and Mourner's Kaddish.
El Male Rachamim Shochein B'meromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachan Kanefei Hashechina Emalot Kedoshim Kedoshim Udiorim Kezar Harakia Mashirim Et Nishemat Sarah Fagel Bat Dovber Veselma Alecha Liolama Began Eden Tei Menuchato הסתיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Shirley Goldstein, who is gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. We'll conclude with Kaddish Yatom with Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Amen. Ve'alma divrach yibrutei ve'yamlich malchutei v'chayehon u'vyomehon u'chayeh l'chol Beit Yisrael v'gala v'zman kariv v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'mei maya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudishah le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbehata v'nechemata da'amiran b'alma v'yimeru yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'hayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. May Shirley's memory always be for a blessing, and may our actions be for her memory as well. So you allow the family to please exit first, then of course you can please follow them out.